So, the next thing I was going to ask actually was about advice. So, if you were able to give some advice to Scotty 10, 11 years ago,
Yep.
what would you say to him when he's starting out this journey?
I'd say start earlier. So I think a lot of people say, I wished I'd started my company earlier and all that, right? So I think I never saw myself as a CEO. I saw myself as a number two. You never think you've got the confidence to do what you need to do. So I really wish I'd started the company 10 years earlier than I had. And that's just a confidence thing. I would say, even though I did it, just follow your gut, follow your intuition. If you truly see a vision, if you see something that the world needs and that will make a difference, then follow it, get into it.
Yeah.
That's really what we did.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of how we've got to where we are.
Yeah. How did you stay so steadfast in that? Like, when it was, you talked about this overnight success only taking 11 years. But like, how did you manage to hold on to that? Like, that's a lot of stamina, I suppose.
I think it's because of the difference that we saw that we were making and that we make, and we keep on seeing it. So I think I've met a lot of absolutely fantastic police people, and then you see the difference that our software makes to their efficiency, how much joy they get from using it. It's incredibly rewarding. So I think you see snippets of that all the way along, and it just keeps you driven. So I've talked about, what gets us up out of bed in the morning is knowing that our software, our platform, our networking, has saved one life. We know it's saved a lot more than one life, right? We hear it from the police and the community all the time, and that just feels tremendous. All right, so that's really what keeps us in there.
Yeah, amazing.
I think the more recent successes we've had internationally have been the most rewarding. So the first international customer coming out of the blue, essentially doing a lot of research on what we do and on who we are, and choosing us was a great vote of confidence. Probably the second one that we're working on now, seeing how passionate and enthused and excited they get back to us about what we've made, feels like, Steve Jobs and Jonathan Ive making the phone. You kind of know you've got something right when you get that kind of feedback from customers. So yeah, and there's been other things we've made in the platform. So I mentioned VGrid's, got 3 or 4 modules. There's something that I'd seen as a requirement around the world that I thought, why haven't other people solved? And they've tried, but we bashed it up, and we decided that we were an IT company that probably knew half of how to write it. And so I rang up a senior police person and asked them, who should we work with to make sure that if we make this thing, it's going to be useful. And he put us into contact with 2 amazing guys who are involved in the Grace Millane case. And so we made it together, wrote the software, released it, and I thought police might use it a little bit. I thought they might think, yeah, it's okay. It just went nuts.
Yeah.
It was a runaway success within SaaS, within this particular module. Wow. And that's a good feeling. You kind of feel, wow, they've kind of written a hit song there. It's version 1 of the hit song. We've clearly got something right because we did it together with police, and off it goes. And so I guess you're always looking for those hits. Yeah. And that feels pretty good.
Yeah. And sticking on those hits, what are some other examples of those hits that have happened along the way that like those milestones that you keep ticking off and gives you that confidence again to keep pushing? What are some other examples?
So the other example, right back at the start, I mentioned Assistant Commissioner Richard Chambers, who obviously saw something they liked in us, trust, integrity, and gave us a shot. I saw in him that around the time, because he'd just taken over the role, they were struggling with the Police Eagle helicopter downlink. And I think the vendor before our time had sold them a downlink and then pretty much left. They'd got their money, they were out the door. And I saw the pain on his face, and I said, Richard, would you like us to help with that? And he went, would you, Scotty? And so to come in to work out how it all worked, to bring in some good people. We brought in another guy who handled the hardware, is also awesome. And to get that working and to learn about that and to make that a useful tool for police, that has been a tremendous success story, which we feel pretty good about, and we feel honoured to help them look after their Eagle helicopter links, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
So, and there's been other ones. I think what we generally find about the VGrid platform and SaferCity is that it's often compelling events that will drive the connections.
Yeah.
So the Trans-Pacific signing, when all the global politicians came over, I remember once again I got a voicemail from Richard Chambers thanking us for what we'd done, how we brought everything in right. That was a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah.
The parliamentary protests when they were going on, and I gave that 3 weeks before I reached out to say, can we help? And then that was all on. We lost 2 weeks of our life connecting things up. But it was a good feeling on the day when they went in, and which we didn't know they were going to go in. But it was good. We had lots of access to parliamentary cameras and other important visual assets. That was a pretty cool feeling too. So yeah, it's just things that make a difference, make you feel pretty good about your contribution.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. And one of the last things I'd like to sort of bring up on this episode is you talked about all the people who are around you. You got good people around you to help you throughout this journey. But that often is something that a lot of people, when they're starting out, find difficult.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like you do, but I'd like to dig into it because they find it difficult giving up control or having people tell them what to do.
Yeah.
You sort of play this role of, I always thought myself as a second. Do you think that's part of the reason why you wanted people around you, because you didn't want to take on the responsibility as the top person? Like, how did that play out for you?
I don't know. I think we've all got self-doubts in our skills in various areas. So I think I know myself pretty well. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at. So I think you have this perception that as a CEO you've got to be good at everything across the board, and so because you're not, you shouldn't be in that seat. I think some of the new management theory that I've heard about actually from a mentor and an advisor was that old-fashioned management theory was that you're good at some things, you're not good at others, so you should spend your time lifting yourself in the areas that you're not good at others. Whereas the latest management theory is actually no, those areas that you're good at, you should focus on and be even better at, and you should surround yourself with people that can help you in those areas that you're not so good at. So that philosophy is pretty much what I've employed in the company, in terms of people that I've surrounded me or myself with that are good at the areas that I'm not, so I can focus on the stuff that I enjoy and that I'm good at, and it seems to be working. But yeah, does that answer that question?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so tell me about that, how that applies to Chris and Adam, because they have big roles inside your company. You put a lot of trust in them. Tell me about that. Has that always been the case with them? Was it a case of giving them trust till they lose it, or was it something they built over time? Like, how did that work?
Well, so I think the relationship. So the second person in the company after Dave left was Chris Wiggins, the CTO, right? We have a very special relationship in terms of we seem to have some connection where I'll see something, I'll share it with him, he'll bounce it off me, we'll reflect it. So I think there's a very powerful bi-directional thing that happens, and he's an absolute genius CTO and programmer, so he'll often be able to go away and very, very quickly build something to test that concept or test that theory. So I think that's very special. We're both probably quite similar people in terms of how we see opportunity everywhere, and a little bit like the Matrix with all the numbers coming down, or the letters coming down. But we're both all over the place in terms of personalities and structure. I think where we're lucky is I brought Adam Parlane into the company probably a few years after that, and he's an extremely competent engineer who's the opposite to Chris and I. So he's more structured, he's more disciplined, he's about process, he's about framework, and he's also good commercially, which is pretty rare to have an engineer who's very astute commercially. So I think the three of us as a triangle, and I tend to call the executive triangle, just play off each other very well and work very well. I've always never had a sense of hierarchy where, there's various levels of hierarchy. I think we all bring something to the table. It's how we all work together that makes that family work. So that's really how the company's wired and how I'd like to keep it wired as long as we can.
Yeah.
Probably might be a little bit harder as it grows because it is growing now, but certainly at the moment that's working.
Yeah, there's something that you said to me earlier that really resonated, where you wanted to buy the new iPad that I have, and you said, well, I have to try and get it past Adam.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a real interesting point about that, and I'd like you to talk about that, where as the owner of the company, you delegated that responsibility of finances to Adam. Like, that's a big trust thing. Like,
absolutely.
How does that work for you, and why did you do that?
I think you probably know your passions and your idiosyncrasies. And so I may have founded the company and I might be the CEO of the company, but the company's the company. And so, for the betterment of the company, you can put other people in charge and trust them in other areas, like how much money you spend on products that you might not need. And so I think, it's that yin and yang, the cross-checking. I think we need to do more of that. At the moment, we're talking about, we have an advisory board. I've got Mike Bush on the advisory board, who's fantastic. Gary Agnew on the advisory board, who's equally fantastic on the financial side of things. We're talking about when we need a more of a formal board. You can have a formal board too early, you can have one too late. And that's to keep me to account. To keep the CEO more to account in terms of how fast the company achieves what it wants to achieve. So there'll probably be more of that moving forward.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It seems it's like a very confident thing, I think, which is, I think, a full circle moment there. Like, you went in not so confident to be the leader, and now you're so confident to delegate that leadership. And do you think that that's how did you learn to get to that point? Like, is that just natural instinct for you?
I think for me it was intuition. It felt right. You see evidence of it working, so it doesn't happen overnight. I think it's hard to manufacture. I think there's a bit of luck in it. There's a bit of growth from various people, but ultimately my role would be to continue to grow Adam, to continue to grow Chris, to continue to grow the size of the company, and stay doing what I want to do, which is I love dealing with the customers, the problem that they're trying to solve. So I think for me it's knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not good at, and trusting people to help you at what you're not good at.
Your story's so interesting because it's not a normal SaaS company founder thing, right? Like, there's either a lot of bravado or a lot of dictatorship.
Right.
You know, that's the common story you hear.
Right.
A lot of people who are like, look how cool I am. So I think the story's been fantastic, and thank you for sharing it with us today, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you very much, Stanley.
Cheers.
Cheers.